Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Press Conference. I'm your host, Jim DeLorenzo, the principal of Jim DeLorenzo Public Relations. You can always find me online at jimdelorenzo.com. One of the best kept business secrets today and in the past has been the power of public relations. I've been in the public relations business all my life, and I encourage you to reach out to me with any questions you might have about this mysterious art of public relations and how it could help you and your business. Please feel free to email me at jim@jhdenterprises.com, call me at 215-266-5943, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. In my public relations career, I've had the good fortune to meet many interesting people: athletes, entrepreneurs, reporters, coaches, authors, executives, editors, entertainers, and innovators. My guest today is Michael Sherlock, the Chief Potential Officer of Shock Your Potential, a Philadelphia-based consulting agency. Michael has been a turnaround specialist and has transformed global businesses in her career. As the Vice President for U.S. sales at 2 multinational medical device companies, she was responsible for net revenue over $75 million. In her current career, she has created and executed business transformation initiatives across hundreds of businesses, built leadership development programs for numerous C-level executives, and helped her clients generate additional annual revenue. She deals in the potential, business potential, leadership potential, and professional potential. She is the author of 2 business books, with 2 more on the way. The 2 that she has with us today are Tell Me More and Sales Mixology. I've forgotten the title of the second one, I apologize. But I know that you have 2 on the way. But I've always wanted to have you on the show since I started this program. And I'm glad you could be here today, Michael.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's very much of a pleasure to be here with you today.
Now, what I find interesting about, I'll ask you about your books a little bit, but your career, you had a very successful career in sales for large companies. What was the pivot point for you where you said to yourself, I'm really good at helping people get to the next level. I'm really good at helping people unlock their potential. I'm really good at helping these businesses unlock their potential. Where can I make a difference beyond the companies that I'm working with right now?
It's a great question. And as you do that, I'm finding my lipstick is, starting to play around. So like any good public relations opportunity, you just go with it.
That's right. That's right. Go with the flow.
It's a great question, and I think it causes me to think back at different chapters of my life, because I really am a multiple entrepreneur. I've done it multiple times in my life, in my career. And there it goes again. So we're just going to go with the moment. And the very first business that I started on my own in my mid to late 20s was speaking and training.
Okay.
And mostly because I love it. I've done it in every part of my career, every job I've ever had. I've had to train people, get up in front of groups of hundreds or thousands of people all over the world. And I knew that was something that I was passionate about and I could really inspire people. So as I went through my life and my career, it wasn't a good time in my mid to late 20s because I kind of needed to have, mortgage payments,
sure,
and, bills, and I wasn't experienced enough to know how to run a business at that level at that point in time in my life. So I kept getting pulled back into the workplace, and over time, I kept having this nagging thought in the back of my head of, at what point in time am I going to just say, okay, I can really follow this dream? And when it came to the point where I wrote and published my first book, I said, you know what, here's the opportunity. What can I do with it?
Right.
And that's really what, as things transpire, your career changes, opportunities change. One day I just said, okay, this is going to be something I follow today, and I haven't looked back. It's been really a joy.
That's wonderful. Now, what led you to that first book? And what was the first book, Tell Me More?
Yeah,
Yes.
it really is. I always wanted to write a leadership book, and so this is really about my leadership philosophy and what I had to learn about myself through lots of trial and error. And at one point in time, I had a very, very large staff of people responsible to me, so hundreds and hundreds of people spread out all across the U.S., and a very large management team underneath me. And I had managed groups of, 10, 20, 50, but managing hundreds and hundreds was vastly different. And at that point in time, I realized that I couldn't do everything myself. I had to learn how to empower the people who worked for me. And instead of trying to carry every monkey on my back, I finally had to figure out what's going to be the key. And instead of trying to solve every problem, I would stop. And when people would come to me and say, Michael, we've got this crisis, or what do I do about this? Instead of answering, because I always had an answer.
Right.
I always wanted to move through and get to the next thing. I stopped and I would say, Jim, tell me more. Tell me more about the problem. Tell me more about what the issue is. Tell me what, what are you bothered by it? And as people would start to tell me, they would come up with the solution 9 times out of 10. What that did is it allowed them to feel more powerful and more empowered because they knew that they could come up with solutions on their own, but they were also finding that I would trust them to find those solutions. And pretty soon I could work on many higher level projects because the people that reported to me could trust themselves better, and then they began to trust the people that reported to them.
And you could also trust them more because you knew more about their process, what they were going through and what they were thinking.
Absolutely, and that's part of what the joy of that is, the Tell Me More strategy, is that I could find out how people worked through problems. And over time, people would stop coming to me with major issues. They'd come and say, Michael, I have this problem. This is how I broke it down. This is what I tried to do. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. I don't know where to go here, or I want to strategize on the next element. So our discussions became more strategy focused. But if somebody really came to me and I'd say, what do you think you should do after we go through all that unpacking of the issue? Then if they said, I really don't know, then I'd say, no problem. Let me tell you what I think. And then I could give them some solutions, some choices, some options, but only if they said, I really don't know where to go from here.
If they had gotten to a point where they needed to raise their hand and say, I need somebody else's opinion on this.
Absolutely. And then they didn't feel like I was going to leave them hanging. But up to that point, they would come to me with fewer and fewer small problems. They would begin to work through things themselves. And what I realized, and when I had to look in the mirror at myself as a leader, I had to realize that by every time that I was trying to solve a problem for them, I was creating their dependence on me. And that's not fair.
That makes it worse for you, but it also makes it worse for them because they're not able to, and God forbid you're not there.
Yes. Or
does everything stop?
Just the fact that you want your leader to trust you. And if you don't feel that that leader trusts you and you can't make decisions on your own, how confident do you feel in that job, for that company, in your future? And I wanted people to see the success that they could achieve if I was on vacation or if I was at a different company. They had to know what they were capable of.
Now, you mentioned that first book, Tell Me More, is your leadership philosophy. And I've read it. I love it. I think it's a very interesting book. You've written it in an interesting style because you use the approach of a novel more than a how-to book.
Yes.
You use the power of storytelling, which is something I strongly believe in, but you use the power of storytelling in a novelistic style to get your point across. How did you come across that style?
You know, it's always been my favorite way of reading any kinds of leadership or personal or professional development books. But when I first sat down to write the book, I thought that I had to write it in that how-to. Here's Michael's top 10 things of how to be a great leader. And one day I was at the Pennsylvania Women's Conference, and it was the first time in a long time I'd gone to a conference just for me. I wasn't speaking, I wasn't organizing it, and I sat there and I listened to these speakers, and I realized their books were written in this format, and I realized how many of these books in this format were sitting on my own shelves at home, and I went home and I wrote the first book in 6 weeks.
That's amazing.
It just came without a problem, and that's when I realized, for me, the storytelling, to your point, is something that lasts more ingrained in you when you read it, and it definitely was an easier way for me to tell my story without trying to sound like I know it all. My characters show their vulnerability and the mistakes they've made, but they also show how they use things to get themselves to the next level of success.
And it's relatable, and it's an anecdotal style that kind of seals the story in your memory. You think, okay, how did this person handle this? I can go back and read this. Not a lot of business leaders truly grasp, or at least they haven't until very recently grasped the power of storytelling. And in a lot of cases, they tend to rely on facts and figures and bundle them all together and think that's a great story. But they don't really realize, okay, how did this company get started, or why did I name it this thing, or why did I hire this person, or why did I write this book when I did? I think that those stories are much more important and interesting to people and much more memorable than a recitation of facts and figures.
I do too. And it's interesting how people absorb information, because there's some people that are much more facts and figures focused, and I understand that. I think there's balance. But to your point, there's a great man that I've had the great fortune of interacting with. His name is Oded Brenner, and he was the gentleman who created Max Brenner's chocolate, Chocolate by the Bald Man, and he sold that company, and now he started on a completely different company. But I interviewed him several times, and one of the things that he keeps saying is, it's all about the story. I can tell you how cold the fridge needs to be to have my chocolate be at the right temperature and be safe, but I want to tell you why I'm creating chocolate dreams, chocolate manifestations, because that to me is what creates the business.
That's what makes people interested. That's what people, my friend Charlie Timmons would say, using the know, like, and trust model.
Yes.
That's something that you can't buy that.
Absolutely.
You really just have to be able to do that and share that, and that makes people interested in you and makes people interested in what you're doing.
And it makes them a part of you and feel like they are a part of your story and a part of your journey.
Now, did Shock Your Potential grow out of the first book?
No. When I finally said, okay, and I had actually published the first book while I was still working for another company, and I had no time to promote it. I had nothing that I could, spend the time on. But at that point in time, I said, okay, it's time. I'm going to pursue this. And I went with an individual to help me create my website and all the components of what we came up with, so we needed a business idea. So Shock Your Potential came out of that, and there's a fun little story behind it.
I would like to hear that, because that's such a great company name. It's such a great business name. But we're going to take a quick commercial break for some messages from our sponsors. We'll be right back with Michael Sherlock.
Footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
So he thought it up. Welcome back to Press Conference. My guest today is Michael Sherlock, the Chief Potential Officer of Shock Your Potential. And we were talking about the genesis of the book, Tell Me More, which is her first book, and then how you started Shock Your Potential. Now, you said there was a backstory behind the name.
Well, it's really funny because I was sitting down with a friend of mine who's a web designer, and we were talking about, what did I want for my web design? What did I want for my logo? And I had no idea. All I knew is I wanted to write more books, and I wanted to do a lot of speaking and training. So, he was asking me questions like, what do you want to be known for? How do people remember you? And I go, well, clearly I have colorful hair, so I'm kind of shocking. And my name is Michael, so that's kind of shocking. And I said, and I deal with potential. I deal with people's sales potential, leadership potential, their professional potential. So I don't know. And he came back a couple days later and said, you don't have to take this idea or, if you don't want to, but we already secured the web domain for Shock Your Potential. And I probably sat on it for about a month.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. And then one day I woke up and I went, that's it. It really is. It fits with me.
It's a great name. And again, it's a memorable name. It's a relatable name, and it generates conversation.
Absolutely.
Which is what you want, because when you start the conversation, all of a sudden people are going to listen and tell you more.
Absolutely. And it's fun because my logo is very colorful and it's all a part, and people will look at my logo and then they'll look at my hair and I'll go, look, this is not by chance. Like, this all works together.
There is a design here. Whether it was originally intended that way, it has now become the way you are. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like me and the color blue. I never really intended for blue to be my color, but my grammar school, my high school, my college, two of the first three companies I ever worked for were blue and white.
Oh, there you go. You can't avoid it.
And it's like, okay, what do I want for my logo? I guess I'm going to go with blue and white. Keep the trend going. Now, you start the business, and you've told us a little bit about you have a passion for teaching and coaching and for public speaking, and that is really a great skill to have, and that's a great talent to have that people take for granted. People think, oh, I can do that. And you really can't unless you've really worked at it. But did it come naturally to you, or was it something that you worked at for a couple of years? It
always has come naturally. In fact, I was reflecting the other day how in the 6th grade, we got a brand new grade school, and they picked me and one other young man to be get the key to the school. So all of a sudden they're like, give a speech. And they handed me the key, and here's 600 people. And I'm like, okay. So I got up there and spoke. And I've spoken to audiences very large. I think the largest is about 1,800 people. I've spoken to them very small audiences. And I've actually been at a conference once where the keynote speaker did not show up. And it wasn't a huge conference, but it was, 60 or 70 people. And they're like, we don't know what to do. And I said, I'll go on. And just got up there and spoke without any notes because it's comfortable to me.
Yeah.
And to me, I love that sense of being able to look in the audience and see people and read them. I know when they're bored. I know when it doesn't make sense. I know when they're really engaged. And to me, when I can create a message, there's something very powerful about how people retain, what they're hearing when they're engaged with that person. So I've always tried to strive to be that person that will keep your attention, that will make you wonder, what's going on, and that will make you want to make some changes because of what you've heard.
I think one of the interesting things too is, and I've seen you do this, and I try to do it as well, when you're speaking to a group, you make eye contact with people from wherever you are standing, which is, people don't look at that enough as a way to connect with an audience. But if you are up there and you're reading from a list of things, and you're at a podium and you just keep looking, and you look up and you look up, and you zone out. It's easy if you're in the audience to just zone out on something like that. Whereas if, all of a sudden you see that they're looking right at you, the speaker is looking right at you in the audience. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I can remember being at a Broadway show once where the lead actress, I was in the second or third row, and the lead actress and I locked eyes at one point, and I felt like, she sees me here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's important. It's about being seen. There's two quick things about that. One is, I remember having somebody teaching a speaking class who said, look at everybody's forehead in the room. And I'm like, why would I look at their forehead?
Yeah.
Because that will give the impression you're looking them at the eyes. And I'm
Why
like,
can't you look them in the
how about
eyes?
look them in the eyes?
Yeah.
But people are afraid. And that's one of the reasons that people will look at the foreheads, because they're nervous speaking. Most people
Okay.
are uncomfortable with that. But the other thing is, I started out as a teacher. So I was a Catholic school teacher long ago.
Okay.
And one of the things that I always loved to do when I was teaching is I would read the room, and if somebody wasn't paying attention, I would get very close to them.
Right.
And I would make eye contact until I would make them uncomfortable enough that they'd start paying attention. Now, this was seventh grade.
That is a great way to do it, though. It really is. It really
But
is
you
a
didn't
great
ha-
way to connect.
And
too.
you don't have to call them out.
Yep.
But the same thing, it works with adults. You don't have to make them feel bad or ashamed, but they get the message. Look, you are looking at me. You do know that I'm paying
Right.
attention or not. And then you have them engaged.
It's also funny, too, if you have that connection with somebody in the audience and all of a sudden they disappear. You look towards another person in the room, and then you look back to the person and they're gone. It's like, where did they go?
Yeah, how did they sneak out when I was looking the other way?
That's an odd experience, but yeah. When we were talking during the break, you had mentioned you had been doing some interviews of millennials, which is sometimes a misnomer, but sometimes it's a pejorative, and sometimes it's a compliment. But tell me about some of those interactions with millennials as far as how they're getting their information, what their habits are.
Well, I was sitting in a meeting in November with about 30 people in a room, and I think for 5 minutes, majority of the people were complaining about millennials, something about millennials. And I was looking around the room, and I'm like, of these 30 people in here, at least 5 of them are millennials.
Right.
And probably more, because the gap is kind of interesting. And I thought, why are we beating up on millennials? What's the deal? And so for my podcast, I try and, as I'm relaunching it again this January, I want to always have, kind of my people that I interview about their potential and what potential they are achieving, what they're trying to do for their communities and for others around them. But I always like to have a special segment. So I put the word out and I said, look, I want to interview millennials, and I'm going to ask you 7 questions that are everything from what do you want people to know about you, what do you do, what do you like to do in your free time, but I also want to know, how do you consume information? Are you watching TV? Are you listening to podcasts? And I'll tell you, the response has been so great that I'm actually going to finish this out with 100 interviews.
Okay.
I've got about 20 done. I've got another 20 or so scheduled, and I'm just going to keep them going until I've done 100. Because I think it's so important. If we talk about communication, leadership, sales, it's all about communication.
Right.
How we interact and how we make an impact on other people. And what I'm finding with these millennials is, yes, they're frustrated that they're being unfairly characterized
Right.
in many ways, but it's really no different to communicate with a millennial than with you or I. But we don't think that way. So it's about learning to communicate with everybody, regardless of their age, their designation, their generation, and really start looking at a room full of 30 individuals rather than putting people in silos.
And I think it's interesting, too, because you mentioned the TV or the movie and TV show viewing habits. And one of the things that I've encountered in my career in public relations is, people want to be on the front page of the newspaper. Now people want to be on the front page of a magazine. Now people want to be on the, on a podcast. But you really want to find what your audience is devouring, what your audience is consuming, and get to where they're consuming it.
Yes.
So if it's a podcast, you want to be on a certain level of podcast for that audience. I have a client that is mainly appealing to aging baby boomers. Do I really want to go after, certain websites? No, I'm really making my target AARP, the magazine, because this is something that, he knows he can get his hands on, people will get their hands on it.
Yeah.
And he has seen customers come into his business with a magazine article that I've gotten him earned media coverage in a magazine, and that's taped to the box that they're bringing into the business. So it's like, okay, I know my audience is reading these magazines.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to. But at the same time, how are they watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Are they watching it on smart TV?
Yes.
Are they watching it on their phone? Are they watching it on a tablet or on a laptop?
So what are they consuming, where are they consuming it, and when are they consuming
Exactly.
it? And those things are completely different than what we have known in our generation and our
Yep.
time, and adaptation is critical to our success as well as to future business success.
And it's interesting how, especially over the last 20 years or so, that the tools, and I look at them as tools, the techniques don't change, it's the tools that we use for those techniques.
Absolutely.
And they keep changing, every 5-10 years it's been a change. When I first went into the internet side of things, that was a massive change for people to accomplish. Now it's gotten a lot more fast-paced.
Absolutely.
You're about to launch an online community through the Shock Your Potential website.
I am.
Tell me about that. The purpose of that community.
It's very exciting. So what I wanted to do is create kind of a community for people who wanted to continue to work on their leadership, sales, or professional potential, and do it in a way where they could consume information in a number of mediums. So through this portal that I've got going on, they can access everything from past podcasts to some coursework that they can do at their own time, live broadcasts that I'll be doing every week, as well as special guest interviews. So it's kind of a master class all in an online community at a ridiculously affordable price.
Okay.
Because I wanted people to have a way to still stay connected with me, despite whether or not they're reading a book or they're watching my blog posts or listening to my podcast. So it's creating a wealth of information just in one place that they can have access to anytime they want to.
I think it's fascinating that, again, you're taking that multi-platform approach and using different tools to reach an audience.
Absolutely.
I think that's very important. Tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how we can get your books and get to your website is shockyourpotential.com.
Yep.
And your books are for sale through the website.
Absolutely.
The new online community, which is launching very soon, is available through that website as well.
Absolutely.
Your podcasts, your blog posts, all are through there.
Everything.
You can find them there.
So shockyourpotential.com or shockyourpotentialpodcast.com will get you to the podcast, but everything else is all housed in that shockyourpotential.com.
Wonderful. And you've got another book coming out on the way, right?
I do. I have the actual book called Shock Your Potential.
Okay.
So that will be out in September of 2020.
Okay.
And I am, I don't know why I'm crossing my fingers because I know this is going to happen. I'm actually working on a novel that's not business related.
Oh, wow.
So it's that's been a real passion project that kind of came out of the blue, out of a vacation that we took to Greece this summer. And I think it's going to be a really lovely, compelling story that also probably has some, work-life balance issues in it, but it's really about evolution of people and how they view themselves outside of their careers.
Well, I think I would like to have you come back when that book is out and the Shock Your Potential book come out, have another conversation and continue this dialogue.
Excellent. And thank you for letting me show my books.
Absolutely.
Just in case anybody wanted to see them again. Look, I'm a shameless publisher, whatever, publicity.
I love it. Thank you again, Michael, for doing this. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Jim.
it. And thank you for watching our show today. A reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to call me, 215-266-5943. You can call me, leave me a voicemail, or send me a text message there. And you can reach me by email at jim@jhdenterprises.com. And if you have any questions for Michael, feel free to forward them to me, and I will get them on to her. And look forward to seeing you all again here very, very soon. Thank you again, and have a great day.